All right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm glad that you're here, and hopefully when we're done, you'll be glad you were here too. This is how to predict test questions. I'm going to explain that in a minute, but I wanted to say one thing before I start. The next 5 workshops starting today all have that word in the title, and a lot of students are good students except when they take tests. And then they're not so good. And so whether you're able to come to all 5 or as many as you can, I'm going to try to give you all kinds of ideas of how to prepare for tests right, how to take tests well, what to do if you get nervous during a test to think again, all those things. So those are all coming up in these next weeks. This is what we're going to talk about today primarily, but before I even get into that, I wanted to ask you a question, and this is kind of a strange question for me to start, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you were taking a college class, especially a difficult one, and your teacher passed out the test to you 2 or 3 days before the real test and gave you 10 minutes or so to look through the questions, would that be a helpful thing? Yeah, I assume so. Is that ever going to happen? Probably not. So today is kind of like the next best thing in a way. My goal with this is to help you realize that you can actually read and study your textbooks a different way than most people do. That starts to get you inside the mind of the teacher. That's a scary place to be sometimes, inside the mind of the teacher. But to try to anticipate or predict what test questions you'll see on the real thing. If you can learn to do that, you'll know the answer to them because you will have studied them ahead of time, and that's to your advantage. And so that's what we're going to go through. So out of these 3 ideas or techniques, the one we're going to start with, and we're actually going to spend the most time on, is this first one here. And before I teach this to you, and I'm going to give you a handout and sort of show you how it works, I want to tell you a little story, a little illustration. When one of my 2 daughters was very little, about 3 or 4 or 5 years old, she was the world champion of something. And when you have the world champion living in your house, that's pretty nice. It's the best in the whole world. Except that what she was the world champion of was question asking. And if you've ever been around small children at a certain age, they drive everyone crazy around them asking questions. And it drives you crazy if you get that, but actually it's a wonderful quality for a child to have. They're so hungry to learn about everything. They don't know anything. And one of the main ways that children learn is by asking questions. My daughter would be walking with me. She would see someone crossing the street, and she would say, "Who is that? Where is he going? Why is he wearing that?" Questions all the time. She could ask 20 or 30 questions in about 2 minutes. And I'm a very patient person, but everybody has their limit. And one time, just to show you how often she asked questions, she had asked me about 20 or 30 questions in the last 5 minutes, and we were at home. And I asked her something very politely. I said,